those who do not know history are condemned to repeat it. This famous quote by George Santayana helps us look at the past to better understand the present. Indeed, reflecting on these words, it clearly emerges how human errors tend to repeat themselves, leaving deep marks over time. It is natural to ask ourselves, have we forgotten history, or have we never really known it? And how is it possible that, despite centuries of reflections, criticisms, and suggestions from great men, the same errors continue to recur? Politics, with its mechanisms and contradictions, seems to have passed through the centuries without learning from the failures of the past. For more than 1,500 years, philosophers have warned of the risks of poorly managed power, injustice, and corruption, yet we continue to find ourselves trapped in a cycle that seems to have no end. It is as if humanity continues to stumble over the same problems, unable to break a destiny that seems already written. In this video, we will explore how politics could really serve humanity, avoiding becoming its downfall. We will also try to find answers to the question, will humanity ever be able to create a political system that truly values existence? To do so, we will explore the extraordinary thinking of 4 different philosophers who lived in different eras, separated by about 500 years from each other, and who came from very distant cultures and parts of the world. Each of them analyzed the relationship between politics and human existence, not only denouncing its limits and distortions, but also proposing ideas and solutions that, if adopted, could have both improved the human condition and prevented many of the errors that continue to be repeated. 4 thinkers, a journey through centuries of history, a reflection that today more than ever invites us to stop and ask ourselves, how much have we really changed? Enjoy. Our journey begins with Anicius Manlius Torquatus Severinus Boethius, better known as Boethius, a thinker who lived in a time of great change and uncertainty. Born in 480 in Rome, he was one of the last exponents of classical culture in a world marked by the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. His life was deeply intertwined with the political tensions of his time under the reign of Theodoric, an Ostrogothic king who sought to maintain a balance between Roman traditions and the new reality of the barbarian kingdoms. Boethius came from a noble family and received an exceptional education that led him to devote himself to philosophy, politics, and the translation of the works of Aristotle and Plato, laying the foundations for medieval philosophy. This historical context, characterized by instability and power struggles, profoundly influenced his thinking. He lived in the heart of a society where politics was often synonymous with intrigue and injustice. His most famous works, such as The Consolation of Philosophy, were the result of reflections born during a period of imprisonment. Unjustly accused of treason, he spent the last years of his life in prison, where he developed an imaginary dialogue with philosophy itself, an allegorical character who guided him to find comfort and answers to his deepest questions. In this work, he stated that true happiness is not found in material goods or power, but in virtue and wisdom. This thought, which still resonates today, represents the heart of his criticism of politics. Boethius saw politics as an unstable institution, incapable of guaranteeing true human fulfillment. Power, often corrupt, represented for him a force that alienated individuals from their highest purpose. He believed that human existence should seek its meaning not in earthly conquests, but in the connection with eternal values. Despite the chaos and injustice that surrounded him, his answer was clear: refuge in philosophy, which he described as a guide capable of offering serenity and stability even in the darkest moments. Through his words, he left a universal lesson. The changeable things of the world, such as political power and wealth, cannot give lasting happiness. He therefore proposed to ignore the turbulence of politics and to focus on what was eternal and immutable, philosophy and virtue. A message that, despite personal tragedy, inspired subsequent generations. Boethius died in 524, executed after a long imprisonment. If you would like to support our work, you can leave a like, subscribe to the channel, or make a donation through the super thanks that you find right under the video. Thanks for the support. Continuing our journey through time, we move forward about 500 years to meet Al-Biruni, one of the most extraordinary figures of the Islamic Golden Age. Born in 973 in Kath, in present-day Uzbekistan, he lived at a time when the Islamic world was a center of knowledge and innovation. A scientist, mathematician, historian, and philosopher, he was a living example of how intellectual curiosity could embrace multiple disciplines. His commitment to research made him one of the most influential thinkers of his time, leaving an indelible mark not only on philosophy, but also on science. The historical context in which he operated was characterized by relative political stability under the caliphates, but also by strong inequalities and rigid control. This environment, while on the one hand conducive to the accumulation of knowledge, on the other hand, placed limits on individual freedom and the possibility of expressing ideas contrary to power. Despite this, he did not allow himself to be discouraged. His vast oeuvre includes fundamental texts such as Kitab al-Hind, an in-depth analysis of Indian culture and religion, and the Canon of Masud, a compendium of astronomy and mathematics. Through these works, he demonstrated a unique ability to observe the world with an open mind and a critical spirit. Al-Biruni did not hesitate to criticize the politics of his time, often calling them an obstacle to the spread of knowledge and the growth of society. For him, the main problem lay in the ignorance of rulers and authorities, who often used power to maintain control rather than to promote the common good. Doesn't this still seem incredibly relevant today? He believed that human existence could only find its meaning through the search for truth and knowledge, which he considered the pillars of a dignified life. His criticism was not only directed at political systems, but also at the mentalities that fostered conformism and submission to power. The solutions he proposed were radical for his time, but are still extraordinarily relevant today. He promoted education as a means to emancipate the individual and society, emphasizing the importance of knowledge that was accessible and shared. He believed that only an enlightened society could overcome inequalities and address problems related to politics. In one of his most famous reflections, he stated that the search for truth is the greatest act of freedom, indicating that knowledge is the path to a more just and meaningful life. Al-Biruni died in 1048, but his thought continues to inspire anyone who believes in the transformative power of knowledge. His legacy is a reminder that despite the limitations imposed by politics, intellectual curiosity and commitment to truth can transcend the boundaries of time and culture. Even today, his words resonate as a call to look beyond appearances and fight for a more equitable and aware society. Let us now move on to the third protagonist of this journey and enter the heart of the Renaissance to meet Juan Vives, born in 1493 in Valencia, Spain. This period, characterized by extraordinary discoveries and cultural ferment, was also marked by profound social and political inequalities, which profoundly influenced Vives' thinking. A philosopher, educator, and humanist, he dedicated his life to reflecting on the human condition and how to make it better. From a young age, His life was marked by political and religious instability. His family of Jewish origins was persecuted by the Inquisition, forcing him to take refuge in other European countries, including the Netherlands and England. This dramatic personal context influenced his thinking, leading him to question the causes of injustice and the solutions to address it. Among his most famous works are De Subventione Pauperum and De Anima et Vita, in which he addressed issues related to poverty, education, and the meaning of existence. Vives harshly criticized the politics of his time, describing it as a system that perpetuated inequalities and exploited the weakest to maintain power. For him, the main problem lay in the inability of governments to understand and address the real needs of ordinary people. His thinking was deeply rooted in the idea that politics, rather than being an instrument of oppression, should promote the common good. This led him to develop an innovative vision for the time, in which education and social support were considered essential elements to build a more just society. Like Boethius, he believed that knowledge was essential to address the difficulties of politics and to improve the human condition. However, while the former saw philosophy as a personal refuge to find consolation and meaning, Vives focused his attention on practical and collective solutions. His proposals focused on creating an educational system accessible to all and on instituting policies to support the poorest. He believed that ignorance was the main evil that fueled social and political injustice, an obstacle that only education could overcome. In one of his most famous reflections, he stated that education is not a privilege, but a necessity to build a just society. For him, education was the key to emancipating individuals and making them participants in the construction of the common good. Juan Vives died in 1540, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire anyone who believes in the transformative power of education and the possibility of creating a more equitable society. His ideas, although developed over 5 centuries ago, still resonate today, inviting us to reflect on how little has been done to overcome the inequalities that he himself denounced. It is time to immerse ourselves in the philosophy of Robert Nozick, a central figure in contemporary philosophical thought. Born in 1938 in Brooklyn, New York, philosopher, politician, and theoretician of libertarianism, he lived in a period marked by the great social, political, and economic transformations of the 20th century. His ideas represent a fundamental contribution to the debate on the limits of the state and individual rights, offering a unique and provocative perspective. Nozick was formed in a context of growing political tension between the Cold War and the civil rights movements. These events profoundly influenced his thought, pushing him to question the role of the state and the impact of political power on human existence. His most famous work, Anarchy, State, and Utopia of 1974, is considered a fundamental text of modern political philosophy. In this work, he exposed a radical vision, defending the idea of a minimal state, limited to essential functions such as the protection of individual rights. His critique of politics focused on state intervention in the lives of individuals. For him, political power, when it extends beyond certain limits, becomes a force that oppresses freedom and personal autonomy. He believed that human existence found its meaning in the ability to act freely without external coercion. In one of his most incisive reflections, he wrote that the individual has rights so inviolable that not even a just state can transgress them. This thought summarized his belief that politics, if unchecked, could destroy the very foundations of an authentic life. The solutions proposed by Nozick were equally radical. He imagined a society based on voluntary exchanges in which the state had a minimal role, limiting itself to guaranteeing security and respect for what were fundamental rights. He believed that human well-being could not be imposed from above, but had to emerge from the free interaction between individuals. His vision of justice was centered on respect for property and autonomy, rejecting any form of forced redistribution. He died in 2002, but his thought continues to stimulate reflections on the relationship between politics and freedom. We can thus say that the proposed solutions are intertwined in a clear message, promoting knowledge, education, virtue, and social justice to create a society in which human dignity is respected and the common good guides every political choice. But then, in your opinion, is it possible to imagine a future where power is truly at the service of the common good? A future where the political system finally puts human dignity at the center